The note arrived not with a thud or a gentle slide, but with the chilling precision of a whispered accusation. It wasn't a bill, an invitation, or a threat. It was an envelope from Bellamy Gardens, the most exclusive wedding venue in the city. And inside, a contract. My gaze dropped to the bottom of the page, where a signature sat like a silent indictment, authorizing payments of $76,000 for my sister Eleanor's wedding. But it wasn't my signature. Not really. The loops were too round, the slant too steep. It was a clumsy, desperate imitation of my name, Andy Cullen. In a single, horrifying instant, the room began to spin. My coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor, a dark, bitter liquid splattering across my bare feet. I barely felt it. I felt nothing but a crushing weight of betrayal. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was a carefully calculated theft, a brazen forgery on a contract for a sum of money I had explicitly refused to give. My own mother and father, the voices of my childhood, echoed in my ears. "You're the responsible one, Andy. Destiny's just finding herself." They had conditioned me to be their family's financial safety net, the ever-giving ATM with a pulse. 2 months ago, at a Sunday dinner that felt more like a public trial, they all looked at me with an expectation so heavy it felt suffocating. "Since you've got that promotion coming," my father had said, "you could help give your sister the wedding she deserves." My quiet, firm refusal, "I can't afford that. I'm still paying off my student loans," had been met with a disappointed silence that was louder than any argument. "Family takes care of family," my father had declared, a statement that had always felt like an honor, but now felt like a life sentence. The forged contract wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the physical manifestation of a decades-long pattern of exploitation, a final, definitive act of disrespect. They weren't asking for my help. They were simply taking what they believed was theirs by right. My phone pinged, an email notification appearing on the screen. "Interior design position, Charleston office interested in your portfolio." I picked up the contract again. My life had been a meticulously constructed house of cards, and they had pulled out the foundation. "This ends now," I whispered to the empty room. The world outside my window blurred as I sat in my car, staring at the Charleston offer. The numbers on the screen, a 20% raise plus relocation assistance, were more than just digits. They were an escape route, a chance to build a life where my paycheck belonged to me, where my credit wasn't a family resource to be tapped. The silence in the car was a stark contrast to the cacophony of my phone, which buzzed relentlessly with messages from Eleanor, a colleague who had recommended me for the position. Her messages were filled with encouragement, a lifeline to a world where my work was valued and my personal life was my own. "You'd be away from all the family drama you've mentioned," she had texted, her words landing with the validation I didn't know I so desperately craved. The realization was a sharp, painful jolt. It wasn't just a wedding. My family hadn't just asked for my help. They had been planning to take it regardless of my answer. My hands, which had trembled with fear for so long, now felt steady as I methodically opened a new spreadsheet. I titled it Family Loans. For the next 5 hours, I scrolled through years of bank statements, credit card bills, and old emails, each entry a broken promise, a debt unpaid. The summer I worked double shifts to lend Eleanor money for her trip to Cancun. the graduation money that disappeared into my mother's temporary need, my father's business venture that required just a small investment. By sunrise, the spreadsheet contained dozens of entries spanning nearly a decade, the total glaring back at me: $42,387. And now the $76,000 wedding on top of it all. With a cold surgical detachment, I began to gather the evidence, documenting everything I would need. I scheduled a call with the moving company, selecting a very specific time and date. The 14th, around noon. My family would be at a cake tasting, blissfully unaware that while they were choosing between fondant and buttercream, I would be orchestrating my escape. The interview for the Charleston position was scheduled for my lunch break. As I sat in my car, my laptop screen filled with the face of Gregory Winters, the creative director. He spoke of my work with a respect I had never known. For the first time, I felt the space to be myself, to speak my truth without apology. When he asked for my salary expectations, I didn't stammer. Based on my experience and the Charleston market, I'm looking for $82,000 annually, I said, my voice clear and confident. His eyebrows rose, not in offense, but in impressed surprise. "That's precisely our range for this position," he replied. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer a victim. I was an architect of my own future. The official job offer arrived by email on a Tuesday morning. The salary matched what I requested, the start date was 3 weeks away, and the lease agreement for my new apartment was digitally signed. My phone buzzed with an endless stream of text messages and calls from my family. My aunt corners me with a teary-eyed hug, calling me a sweet, generous girl for funding Eleanor's entire wedding. My father boasts to his golf buddies about how my daughter Andy wouldn't hear of anything less than the best. My sister flutters between groups, thrusting an elaborate floral arrangement at me. The day I finally left, the world outside my window was a perfect crystalline blue. My phone buzzed in my hand with 7 missed calls from Eleanor in 3 minutes. She had just found out that I had called Bellamy Gardens and explained the forgery. The game was beginning. I smiled and opened the door to the moving crew. My voice, as I gave them instructions, was foreign even to my own ears. Steady, authoritative, nothing like the hesitant whisper I had used around my family for 27 years. With each box they carried out, I felt a weight lifting, a sense of liberation I hadn't known was possible. From my new apartment in Charleston, I watched my phone vibrate with their calls. The voicemails were a cascade of emotions. My mother's voice wavering between anger and panic, my father's booming with authority, a final desperate attempt to impose control. "Family takes care of family. Andrea, don't make me come find you." I saved each one as evidence. The final crushing blow came from my sister's roommate. Eleanor was crying, threatening to cancel the florist and photographer. The house of cards was finally collapsing. When I finally answered a call from her, her voice was raw with desperation. "You selfish, ungrateful witch! After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I repeated, my voice steady. "The wedding bill is the consequence of your choices, not mine." I ended the call. In the quiet of my new life, I prepared the final document: a formal letter to Bellamy Gardens, a handwriting analysis report, and audio files of Eleanor admitting to the forgery. I pressed send. Within the hour, the venue manager called me, his voice thin with tension. "Miss Collins, this is..." highly unusual. My final email to my extended family was dignified, factual, with no accusations, only evidence. I attached copies of the bank statements, text messages, and a note from the venue confirming the signature didn't match my identification. Over the next few hours, I watched their frantic, desperate calls and messages fly across the family group chat, each one confirming that the carefully constructed narrative of my generosity was unraveling. The groom's parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement. My parents frantically called for emergency loans, and Eleanor was forced to cancel the fireworks and designer gown. My mother's final voicemail arrived as I was arranging books on my new shelves. "Andy," she began, her voice catching, "we never meant it for it to go this far." I deleted the message without replying. Outside my new apartment, the Charleston sun set, painting the sky in colors I had never seen in my old life. Some bridges burn for a reason. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of $76,000 of expectations finally lifting from my shoulders. Standing on my balcony, I felt the peace of a life I had finally earned. I didn't need to forgive them because I was already free. The question wasn't if I would ever go back, but rather, what would I build now that I was no longer a resource to be consumed, but an architect of my own destiny?